Stocks tumble again today as we see another futures down for 400 points. Everything that we've gained under the Trump economy seems to have gone away in the Dow Jones. We will see what happens as we go into the future. Trump declares himself a wartime president. Stimulus packages are talked about but blocked in the House. And Salt Lake City had an earthquake that nobody except for the people in Salt Lake City heard about. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Oh, I lost my solo thing for a second. So, I am Jay Edgar, and before we get started, of course, we want to tell you to go over and check out freedomscoop.com, where you're going to see a lot of great content creators over there. We've got the R-rated conservative, who has just gone to a daily show, so go give him some love and support. I will be checking him out after I get home from work today. We've got Wyatt Birkenhoff that's been starting a solo video series. We've got a couple of writers in the works. We've got another podcaster up in the works. We've got the wonderful Stephen Ignoramus, who bailed me out when I had a guest drop out at the last minute last week. We've got him over there. We've got the Generational Gap, who will be streaming again tomorrow, so go and check them out. Check us out for all of your needs, and if you have any interest in writing for a freedom of speech platform, go ahead and reach out to me, and we will see what we can do to get you a sample article and get you going. We've got a lot to talk about here today, and a couple things that we need to talk about before we even get into any of the news here. First off, I had to ask the audience here, do any of you at all remember there was a History Channel, I believe, was the one that put it out, a series on the Book of Revelation. It was a mini-series. I think it was only 2 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. So it was more like a long made-for-TV movie was, I guess, what I would compare it to if it was only 2 seasons, or 2 episodes, rather. But one of the things that I've thought about, and I was listening to Relatable with Ali Stuckey yesterday, and she pointed out the fact that we know how the world is going to end because we can go and refer to the book of Revelations to see how the world is going to end exactly, verbatim, exactly how it's written in the book of Revelations. There's no metaphor or anything like that, according to Miss Stuckey. But for those of you who didn't see it, what it seemed to be some historians went through the book of Revelations and tried to interpret it through modern eyes, what could possibly happen through modern science, modern thinking, and basically our modern world. Because keep in mind, that was written what was that written in, like 60 or 70 AD, something like that, where technology was very different and they had a very different understanding of the world. I mean, just the idea of an attack helicopter flying around, what we have now would have looked like a giant locust to somebody from that time. But one of the interesting things that brought this up in my mind here was, of course, Mrs. Stuckey, I should say, informed us that it could never be the coronavirus that would end the world. That would never, ever end the world. Except for the fact that through the interpretation that they had in the Book of Revelation series, when they talked about the massive 7-headed beast that would end us all, what they did was they had given a scenario where some biologists had discovered a 7-pointed virus that was ripping through the country at pandemic rates. And here we are. Now, I don't know anything about the COVID-19 virus. Maybe it only has 5 heads. Maybe it only has 5 points. Maybe it's one of those weird crystalline things that you see in the science books. But it's just an interesting idea, the fact that the hyper-Christians out there don't believe that anything could be left up to interpretation. There will actually be a literal 7-headed animal that comes and consumes us all. Meanwhile, we're sitting here consumed in our own fear because of a virus that nobody knew about until 3 months ago. So that was an interesting thing to see. Jake, the former head of Freedom Scoop, had an interesting observation over on Twitter, so I want to shed some light on that. And his interesting observation, of course, was whatever happened to the whistleblower? Does anybody remember? Nobody's talking about Hunter Biden. Nobody's talking about the whistleblower. Nobody gives a damn about Ukraine. All of this was going to end the world and was going to continue to be the biggest thing in the world up until we started seeing confirmed cases, docked cruise ships, and deaths in the United States. So keep that in mind. And the news cycle, it's a news cycle we're never going to get any closure from. I'm probably going to go through over the weekend and see if I can figure out what's going on with some of these stories, where the closure is, and what's going to be the next step. But I doubt any of the mainstreams are going to be on that. It's going to take a deep dive to go and figure all of that out. Excuse me. Last thing is simply a PSA. This is for my trucker friends, and it looks like I've got a few of them that listen to this show or are familiar with me, or anybody else who can pass along the information to help a trucker out in time of need. It appears this was given to me, the information was given to me by a man who goes by the online moniker of Saint. Those of you who are Beauty and the Beta listeners will recognize him from the call-in show. He's on Discord as Saint. I don't know what his ID number is, but he informed me yesterday that Love's is not going to have any showers. Any of the Love's truck stops across the country are not going to have showers. The Iron Skillet, the Country Platter, and all of the Perkins that are in the truck stops are shutting down, so you're not going to be able to go in for any of them across the country. Not just in places that are under emergency order, you're not going to be able to go into any of them at all. So keep that in mind. And that's not just for takeout either. From the sounds of it, they're shutting down, so you can't even get some takeout and go to your truck. So keep that in mind as you're trucking along, because you guys are the lifeblood of this economy, and you're going to get our supplies over to us as soon as possible. And I just found out this morning before I hit the live button that Quick Trip does not have any showers as well. So keep that in mind in your travels and make sure that you are prepared accordingly. I know if you come up around this area of southern Wisconsin, which that's the most I'm going to give you is the fact that this is southern Wisconsin, you can find some smaller town grocery stores that have plenty of food and supplies. You're not going to get any paper products just yet, but they are starting to trickle back into the stores. But there's plenty of food. They didn't raid these stores as hard as they did in the other ones. So if you can get a little hot plate in your truck, a little microwave, you can get some frozen meals, or even maybe do a little bit of fresh stuff if you can get the right kind of hot plate and you don't mind getting that smell in the cab of your truck. Just some suggestions as you go along, because the entire industry is going to shut down around you, and I don't want to see you guys out, because you guys are going to hold us up amid our crisis that we have going on here. So, that's all the PSA stuff I have here. Let's go talk about the news. So we're going to start with CNBC, because this has become a stock show. So all I'm going to do is read the stocks. From Fred Imbert and Pippa Stevens and Yoon Lee over at CNBC, stock markets live updates. Dow futures drop 400. ECB stimulus, jobless claims jump. So this is a live blog, and we'll check just a couple of the stories here. 8:30 a.m. This is all Eastern time, of course, keep in mind. Weekly jobless claims higher than expected. U.S. jobless claims rose to 70,000 to reach 281,000. For the week ending March 14th, economists surveyed Dow Jones expected a reading of 220,000. Companies have just started what is expected to be an aggressive round of layoffs due to the slump in demand that the virus is causing. 8:21 a.m., U.S. dollar jumps to a multi-year high. As the coronavirus outbreak continues to send jitters through the market, the dollar jumped to 102.329, its highest level since January 11, 2017, as investors look to have cash on hand. 8:18 a.m., Bank of America says the recession is already here, jobs will be lost, wealth will be destroyed. Bank of America warned investors on Thursday, yeah, that's what our market needs right there, that a coronavirus-induced recession is no longer avoidable, it's already here. We are officially declaring that the economy has fallen into a recession, joining the rest of the world, and it is a deep plunge, Bank of America U.S. economist Michelle Meyer wrote in a note. Jobs will be lost, wealth will be destroyed, and confidence depressed. So, sell off and exacerbate that. Fucking people. Seriously. The firm expects the economy to collapse in the second quarter, shrinking by 12%. For 2020, the firm expects GDP to contract by 0.8%. And the last one we're going to do from 8:05 this morning. Hilton and Marriott shares are poised for another brutal day, with both stocks falling more than 10% in pre-market trading after posting double-digit declines on Wednesday. Hotels and other tourism companies are pushing for more than $100 billion in relief from the federal government due to the hit in their business has taken from the pandemic. Pershing Square Capital Management CEO Bill Ackman said on Wednesday that every major hotel stock would go to zero without significant government action, but that he is still buying Hilton shares. That's the guy we need to follow right there. Get some private investment into these places and you will get reward back out of it. The Bank of America thing, that just pisses me off because that is what's driving all of this as we go. The fact that, yes, they're telling you to panic and sell off. They're telling you to crash the market. So, that is the live blog from CNN. CNBC rather. Let's see what CNN has to say. By the way, throw an ad blocker up on your browser and watch all of the big names start to yell at you. I can't even get into Forbes right now. I had a good article about the supply chains from China being permanently interrupted and us going into other methods of getting our supply chains once all of this is over. And yeah, they will not let me into it, and I am not turning my ad blocker off for them. So I won't be reading that. I was excited to read that today too, but that's not going to happen for the morning until I figure out how to get around their ad block Nazism. So let's see what CNN Business has to say. The entire Trump stock rally is nearly gone. This is from Anekin Tape. The Trump stock rally, which at its peak last month was robust and seemingly unending, has nearly evaporated. The Dow fell below 19,732 points Wednesday afternoon, briefly dropping past the index's closing level on January 19th, 2017, the day before President Donald Trump took office. But the Dow inched back to close slightly above the key level. The index finished Wednesday below 20,000 points for the first time since February 2017. The S&P 500 plunged 7% at midday, triggering a circuit breaker that halted trading for 15 minutes. That index is still above its Trump inauguration level, but is closer to wiping out all the Trump stock market gains. The S&P, the broadcast measure of Wall Street, closed down more than 5%. Global equities have been hit hard by the worries about the economic fallout from the coronavirus outbreak, which has now infected more than 7,000 people in the United States. As of this morning, it is 9,000 people. Economists predict recessions for both individual countries and the world economy this year, as the pandemic dealt both a supply and demand to shock the commerce. That said, expectations for a sharp rebound for the economy and the stock market towards the second half of the year are high. So we're back to where we started from. Fortunately, I should say, we're not back down to where we got between the transition between Barack and Bush. But yeah, it's a little scary to think the fact that just in a couple days we were able to drop down to this point. Now, I continue to follow Warren Buffett's advice, and when asked, Warren Buffett said that, how much did you lose in the stock market? And he said, nothing. I didn't sell. So once this is all clear, I do think that there are going to be some people that definitely make out like bandits at the end of it. They're going to hold on, or they're going to buy new stuff very low. Remember what the pigeon said in Schoolhouse Rock: buy low, sell high, take your piece of the pie. Keep that in mind as we go along here, because you're at the bottom here. I'm going to be sending some money home. I said that earlier, but anything that I have left over after I do that, I'm going to throw into Ford, because they're at the bottom right now and they're going to rebound good. They're going to tell the government to get bent when the government comes and tries to bail them out, and they're going to reap the rewards from that, because the people who are anti-government are going to see that, and they're going to want to buy those kind of vehicles. Let's see. CNBC, another one, said, this is from Thomas Frank over at CNBC, Dow briefly wipes out gains under Trump's presidency, remains slightly positive since his election. President Donald Trump has long touted market gains under his administration as an endorsement of his economic policies. On multiple occasions, boasted about the Dow Jones Industrial Average's gains under his tenure. That was before he was blindsided by an invisible microbe. With the coronavirus spreading economic mayhem across the globe, the Dow's steep drop on Wednesday briefly pushed the 30 stock index below the level where it closed on January 19, 2017, the day before Trump took office. The sell-off is a part of a historic market meltdown that has wiped out years of gains in a matter of weeks. At session lows, Dow Industrials fell 319.92 points to 18,917.46 and nearly 600 points below its close of 19,732.40 a day before Trump's inauguration. A surge in major market indices in the last 10 minutes of trading on Wednesday pushed Dow back above its pre-inauguration levels by a thin 166 points. We do have to keep in mind, however, and this is important, we have to keep in mind the fact that, yes, we're below inauguration levels, but we have not gone down below election levels. So for right now, and this is changing daily, keep in mind, this is changing faster than I can keep up with it. For right now, we are still above election levels, which tells me there's still some confidence in the market and some confidence. And we're going to talk a bit about some of the response to this a bit, and a very, very surprising announcement from a congresswoman that you wouldn't expect any of this from. So I do think that we may see a rebound from this, but it's too early to tell at this point. I want to touch on a couple articles that were brought to my attention from Ron Helton because according to him, this may be something else that we need to watch as we go into a little bit of recession and what the market is trying to do to either correct it or still try to make money off of it. This is from NASDAQ.com, contributor Colin Harper from Bitcoin Magazine. The Fed has pumped $500 billion into the repo market. Where does it end? And I hadn't heard about this, and this is a bit interesting for me to look into here. So, in September 2019, the interest rate for the overnight money market, a short-term lending market where banks borrow cash from each other to meet reserve requirements at the end of the business day, surged 10%. Banks weren't willing to lend out capital for the Federal Reserve's target interest rate of 2%. The Fed responded to the cash crunch by financing these so-called repurchasing agreements, repos for short, directly. It offered the 2% interest on the short-term loans that are usually paid back in days or weeks to bring the interest rate down and pump cash into a strapped lending market. It has been offering these overnight loans on a daily basis ever since. When the Federal Reserve began offering these daily agreements in late September 2019, it was the first time it has intervened in repo markets since the Great Recession. The United States Central Bank has funneled roughly $500 billion into the repo market since then, in what was originally pitched as temporary operations that would end in October 10th of 2019, but the daily repo bids are still coming. Currently, there is $229 billion in outstanding repos on the Fed's balance sheet. The Fed is even considering lending directly to smaller financial institutions and hedge funds through the repo market, an unprecedented move in the history of the century-old institution. So, yeah, the Fed is putting money, trying to pump money into a flooded market, and from what I'm seeing out of this, it's possible we could see subprime again, which I do hope the executive branch puts a stop to that because, I mean, that's what faltered our economy the last time. The subprime market exacerbated problems that were had under Carter and Bush 1, and even some of the problems that were introduced by Clinton. But the subprime and the Fed pumping money into it to try and save it was what really pushed us down to the end. So, yeah, this article makes me nervous. Let's see what CNBC has to say. This is from Jeff Cox. Fed announces another $500 billion operation for overnight repo funding markets. The Federal Reserve is continuing to provide support for short-term bank funding as it will institute another $500 billion repo operation Tuesday afternoon amid intensifying funding pressures. In the latest operation, the Fed will conduct another bank or operation that comes on top of a similar offering Monday. The central bank's New York trading desk has been aiming to quell disruptions in the overnight funding markets where banks go to get operational capital. This latest move comes on top of $1.5 trillion announced last week. Repo involves banks posting high-quality collateral for reserves used to operate. The minimum bid for the repo operations has been 0.1%. The repo operations follow other liquidity measures from the Fed aimed at getting banks to keep money moving through the economy. Along with aggressive liquidity measures, the Fed has also cut its benchmark borrowing rate 150 basis points or 1.5 percentage points over the past few weeks. So keep that in mind. I know that they're going to be excited to go out and offer out loans for a while here and they're going to want to offer them cheap because they haven't done it for a while. So keep all of that in mind as you go along and as you do your business and as you watch the economy go along. So let's talk about stimulus at this point. This is from Adam Shaw over at Fox News. Trump calls himself a wartime president over coronavirus as he invokes the Defense Production Act. President Trump on Wednesday announced that he's invoking the Defense Production Act as a part of the administration's effort to tackle the coronavirus pandemic, and also described himself as being a wartime president. Yes, George Carlin actually had a commentary on this, God rest his soul. It was one of his last specials, too. He had a commentary on this, and that's because in America, we like being at war for whatever reason. And if we don't have something to go to war against, we make up an abstract construct to go to war against. I believe were the exact words that he said. So we had the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on poverty. And now, our president now, who is supposed to be different from the establishment, is saying that he is going to go to war on the coronavirus and the poverty that comes from it. So, let's read on. It can do a lot of good things if we need it, he said at a White House press conference. We'll have it all completed, signing it in just a little while. The act ensures the private sector can ramp up manufacturing and distribution of emergency medical supplies and equipment. The move gives the White House the authority to increase production of masks, ventilators, and respirators, as well as expand hospital capacity to combat the coronavirus. Asked if he saw the nation being on a wartime footing, he said he did and described himself as, in a sense, a wartime president. He made the remarks at a press conference along members of the coronavirus pandemic task force. The U.S. has largely shuttered many aspects of daily life in order to stem the rapid onset of the virus, echoing efforts across the globe. As of Wednesday morning, there were 6,519 cases and 114 deaths in the United States. And yes, we have made it up to 9,000 at this point, so. You notice you haven't heard very, very much about the Afghanistan pullout since all of this started. And that was only a couple weeks ago we were just talking about that, and whoop, that's gone. Nobody cares about that anymore. Hell, we might stay in Afghanistan forever at this point. And of course, this is Fox, so they're somewhat friendly to the president, even though they do still have a somewhat left bias here. Let's see what MSNBC has to say about the same story. This is a short one, so. From hoax to war, reversing course, Trump invokes war powers to combat coronavirus. The Beat with Ari, I guess, is the author of this one. As U.S. cases of coronavirus approach 8,000 across all 50 states, the pandemic is swiftly changing everyday life, rattling the financial markets and closing schools in 38 states. The impact clearly marks an inflection point in Washington, where President Trump shifted from downplaying the threat to declaring himself a wartime leader. While the Senate passes new legislation to boost testing and coverage for sick leave, as MSNBC's Ari Melber reports on the latest public health crisis. So, of course, they want you to go over to their website and watch the video. We're not going to do that because it'll shut my channel down on YouTube in a hurry if I try to do it. But yeah, they're trying to play this off as he's going to become a dictator and he's going to. I mean, nothing is ever good enough from this man for these people, but let's see what CNN has to say. The U.S. government is preparing for a coronavirus pandemic that could last up to 18 months and include multiple waves of illness. I got news for you. This is not going to last 18 months. We'll all be at the rate that we're reinfecting. We'll all have immunities or be dead before 18 months hits. It will end the world, or we'll all get antibodies that will take care of it before 18 months. I mean, just today, just overnight, we jumped up to 9,000 cases in the U.S. They're starting to table off in China, which may be bad reporting. It's going faster. Oh, excuse me. It's going faster and faster across the world. It's picking up steam over in China, in Europe, and places like that. And I mean, it's exponential. It'll exponentially grow. So, I mean, the social distancing will help and may push it out to 18 months. But for the most part, in 18 months, the way that it's been growing, everybody's going to have it by that point and will be either recovered or died. So, no, I don't see this going 18 months or longer. Unless there's a massive mutation that goes along with it. But let's see what CNN has to say, because, of course, they're the experts on all of this. Nearly 2 months since the first U.S. coronavirus case, the federal government is now preparing for a pandemic that could last up to 18 months or longer and include multiple waves of illness, a report obtained by CNN shows. Hospitals have already sounded the alarm on quickly vanishing supplies, as the outbreak in the U.S. shows no signs of slowing. In just 24 hours, cases soared by more than 40%. The U.S. government announced this week that it would make up for potential medical supply shortages and deploy 2 hospital ships to help increase medical capacity. Yes, that's what we need, more people out on a cruise ship. The U.S. government, I read that one already. Nearly 9,000 Americans have tested positive for the virus. At least 149 have died. I view it as, in a sense, a wartime president. President Donald Trump said in a news conference Wednesday. I mean, that's what we're fighting. It's a tough situation here. To slow the spread of the virus, governors across the country sprang into action this week, implementing drastic measures such as shutting down schools, transitioning bars and restaurants to takeout services, and putting a ban on mass gatherings. Some city leaders in California, including San Francisco's Mayor London Breed, who was the first to enact such a policy, have instructed their residents to shelter in place and leave their home only if absolutely necessary. About 10 million residents are under such an order. Solano County, the latest to join other Bay Area counties in implementing it, told residents to stay put until April 7th. We're taking this health crisis seriously and trying to protect our community while still ensuring that the essential parts of our country can function and attempting to lessen the substantial burden placed on workers and businesses, Dr. Bella Matias, Solano County Public Health Officer, said in a statement. So, yeah, I mean, it's growing exponentially. We're at nearly 9,000 at this point, and yeah, I don't see a close end to this, or a far out end to this. I see a pretty close one to it, because it'll either snuff itself out from the social distancing, or we'll all get it and we'll all recover from it. And I'm not completely worried about it. Like I say, I'm more worried about making sure that it doesn't get out to people like friends and family, especially the elderly. But for the most part, I don't see 18 months as a reality for this, given the exponential growth. Now, if it slows, and it may change some of that, but given the exponential growth, yeah, 18 months just seems like a stretch. So let's talk about the stimulus now, as long as we're moving forward off of this here. This is from Marissa Schultz over at Fox News, also Hillary Vaughn. Trump administration seeks 2 rounds of checks to Americans in massive coronavirus response. So I gotta ask you guys, what do you plan on doing with your stimulus as it comes along? I can tell you what I plan to do with mine. I'm gonna tear that check in half, and I'm gonna mail it right back to the federal government. And yes, I know, I'm already getting taxed on it. I've got a tax lawyer to take care of that. But nothing comes out of because the federal government doesn't produce anything. I was talking a bit about this on my gaming stream last night. The federal government does not produce anything, and anything that comes out of the federal government is going to have massive strings attached to it. So keep that in mind as you're getting ready to cash the check. I do understand the necessity for it. And if you absolutely need it and you're going to starve to death because you're laid off, don't take my example, don't take my advice. I'm not a financial planner. I'm just a person that looks at the federal government and says, okay, what are they going to expect back out of this? Because they don't produce anything. All they can get is what they can take away from you. And at some point, that bill is going to come due. At some point, we're going to have to sit back and deal with that. So keep all of that in mind as this is coming along. But let's see what Marissa Schultz and Hillary Vaughn have to say. Trump administration seeks 2 rounds of checks to Americans in massive coronavirus response. The White House is moving forward with a proposed $1 trillion coronavirus package that would infuse Americans' bank accounts with 2 rounds of direct cash payments. The Trump administration is seeking $250 billion in payments to Americans, starting April 6th, followed by another $250 billion in cash payment round beginning May 18th, according to the working draft of the plan obtained by Fox Business Network. Yeah, where's this money going to come from? You're delaying taxes and tax returns. You're delaying other payments, student loan payments, and the federal interest that comes from student loans. And they are definitely using that as a crutch to go along. Where's all this money coming from? Where are we getting $500 billion to send this out? I need answers to that. I don't argue the fact that this is needed, but I need an answer as to where this is coming from. The 2 payments to taxpayers would be identical, and the amounts would vary from family income and size, according to the Treasury Department document on the Stage 3 coronavirus proposal. The Washington Post first reported the document. The draft of the plan outlines major economic infusion that goes well beyond the stimulus and bailout plans during the last financial crisis, and designed to prop up an economy that has ground to a halt as stores and restaurants and schools are shuttering nationwide, and families are isolating at home. That's the other problem that I have with this. What is cash going to do with it if nobody has a place to spend the cash? If everybody's sitting at home not doing anything, nobody's going to work, nobody's going to these warehouses to fill the orders, and stores are running on a skeleton crew because they're being forced to by the state governments. What is this cash infusion going to do? Exactly. For the most part, it's going to keep roofs over heads, and that's going to be it. It's going to be mortgage payments and that. But you're not going to fix the economy at that point. You need people going to work and moving products around. The Trump administration's stimulus package is bigger than the 2008 bank bailout and the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which was passed and signed under former President Barack Obama and totaled $787 billion to help stabilize the economy about 14 months after the last recession began, and it didn't do shit for the recession. According to Politico, Pelosi has her own plans for what to do about the market here. This is from Heather Cagle, John Breshnahan, and Sarah Ferris. Sorry, John, if I butchered your last name. Pelosi looks to lay down marker on the next stimulus plan. House Democrats are prepping their own rescue package, even as the Senate is moving swiftly. House Democrats are drafting a new stimulus bill to address the coronavirus pandemic, legislation designed as their counteroffer to a $1 trillion package currently being assembled by the Republican-controlled Senate. Let's not let the GOP take credit for anything. On a private call Wednesday, Speaker Nancy Pelosi directed her leadership team and committee chairs to begin further efforts to address the looming economic disaster caused by the growing coronavirus crisis. The House Democratic plan will incorporate proposals from several panels and is expected to include additional unemployment insurance payments, expanded Medicaid coverage, an airline rescue package, relief for homeowners and renters, support for small businesses, and additional food security measures, according to Democratic lawmakers and aides. Time is of the essence, and the House will move swiftly to protect public health and provide relief for the American people, Pelosi said in a statement on Wednesday. This is just like the government shutdown. Nothing the GOP is going to do is going to be good enough, and once again, I still strongly oppose what the GOP is doing right now, but nothing the GOP is ever going to do is going to be good enough, and Pelosi has to come in and put her own earmarks and her own pet projects into the stimulus bill and try and take the credit for it instead of letting the GOP have it. And this, of course, is coming to a person that doesn't want to see what the GOP is doing go out there because it's going to make things worse, I'm sorry. And I don't see Pelosi's plan doing any better at all. So I know I was looking on Twitter yesterday, and the hashtag has been suppressed again, as far as I can tell. And some of Pelosi's people are actually getting mad at her now, too, because she's going in and trying to revamp this and block it instead of just signing it into law when American people need it the most. And good for them, to be completely honest. If it's more of a vanity project for her than it is an actual relief for the American citizens, she's so distanced from the American people right now. I'm not surprised by that, and her district needs to get rid of her at this point. Isn't she older than Bernie Sanders, or is she slightly younger? Either way. She's the crypt keeper, and she's done nothing but try and pander her own self throughout this entire thing, so we will see what happens. Maybe we won't even get a stimulus here, but I know some of us are still going to work. I know I'm still going to be going to work after this because I need to send some money home because there are other industries that have shuttered their doors and some families that have gone from 2 incomes down to 1, and that is not good for anybody. So we will see what happens there. In a surprising turn of events, this is from Fox News. You can see the look of surprise on Tucker Carlson's face if you actually look at it there. This is from Gregory, though. Ilhan Omar praises Trump's incredible response to coronavirus pandemic. Yes, folks, the world has frozen over. Minnesota Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar unexpectedly praised President Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic Wednesday night, saying it was incredible and the right response in a critical time. I mean, of course, he's handing out UBI, so that's something that they're definitely going to want, but still, Omar has been one of those people where even if Trump had cured cancer, he'd gone out, done the research himself, funded it, and made the cure and gave it to sick children himself personally. They would have found some sort of flaw with that by putting doctors or something out of business. But I got to call balls and strikes, and good for you, Omar. Good. Very good. Omar, normally a staunch critic of the White House, who herself has repeatedly drawn the president's ire, went on to quote Representative Ayanna Pressley, Democrat of Massachusetts, as saying, "Unprecedented times require unprecedented leadership," and Omar added, "We are seeing that in our country right now." Finally, we should never let politics get in the way of good policy, Omar concluded. This is a great start, and hope others will be a part of the united front to push for good policies that will help us work through the economic anxiety the country is feeling right now. Omar was responding to a post by The Intercept's Li Fang, who noted Trump suspended mortgage foreclosures, demanding cash payments to Americans, now invoking the Defense Production Act to force private firms to produce needed supplies is incredible. Kind of a shell shock for anyone who reported on any economic policies in the Obama years. Her praise for the president was matched this week by other Democrats and left-of-center commentators. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on Tuesday told reporters, "His team is on it. They've been responsive, and I want to say thank you." And CNN's Dana Bash asserted that Trump's new tone on the coronavirus made him the kind of leader the people need. So this is surprising, to say the least. I This is out of left field to me, and I can't see any reason to criticize any of this. Maybe we are getting to a point in this country where we're starting to put partisan politics aside and come together for the greater good. Did maybe I hate to see people suffer, but it's just like 9/11, where we had something like life changing happen in our country, and it brought people together, and it made people realize that the partisan fighting and infighting was not getting us anywhere. So I am sorry to everybody who got this disease and is suffering, but my God, good for the people on the top that are starting to come together and try to relieve that. So, got a couple more articles here to go through, and this one here is just for fun because it's the Babylon Bee. But I thought it was funny, so I thought that you guys would find it funny too. Communist Party of China can't believe they're getting such great coverage from the American media for free. Out of Beijing. According to sources with the Communist Party of China, party members are deeply humbled and incredibly grateful for the American media for running defense for them without even charging for it. In a speech Wednesday, President Xi Jinping expressed his bewilderment that the American media will simply repeat its talking points and won't even charge him a dime. You mean we don't even have to pay for this kind of positive press coverage? Amazing, said Xi Jinping. Here in China, we threaten the journalists' families, break their kneecaps, and throw them into prison. Or just pay them off for great coverage like this. America is a truly great place and a real friend to us commies. What kind of favors has the American press done for China? First off, they've repeated China's talking point that they didn't have anything to do with the virus and that it was probably Trump's fault. Then China politely requested that everyone stop calling the virus that definitely came from China the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus, and the American media ran with it. President Xi suggested that journalists refer to the virus as the most likely American virus or the precious gift from our dear friends in China, or even the Trump's fault virus. And surely enough, several American press outlets were all over it. That's so true. The Babylon Bee gets it right every once in a while. When I say pounce on Trump, they say, how high? It's fantastic, President Xi added, laughing. I even offered to pay them, but they all said they're doing it for the love of spreading propaganda and refused any compensation. The Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee. Sometimes their satire is so good you have no idea whether it's true or false. It's so great. So before we get out of here, before we do some things I like and things I hate, let's talk about a news story that I think a lot of people have missed and something we definitely need to pay attention to in the midst of coronavirus panic. 5.7 magnitude earthquake in Utah knocks out power to thousands and diverts flights, which you shouldn't be flying anyway right now because that's a giant incubator, but I realize some people still have to. This is from Jason Hanna and Konstantin Toropin over at CNN. A 5.7 magnitude earthquake shook Salt Lake City area Wednesday morning, cutting power to tens of thousands and suspending work at Utah's public health lab amid the coronavirus pandemic, officials said. Flights to Salt Lake International Airport were diverted, departures were postponed, and terminals and concourses were evacuated so engineers could inspect the facilities, the airport said. The quake was centered around 10 miles west of Salt Lake City, near the city of Magna, starting at 7:09 a.m., 9:09 a.m. Eastern Time, the U.S. Geological Survey said. People in downtown Salt Lake City left buildings and gathered outside after the quake. Talking about the shaking, CNN affiliate KSL reported. It didn't feel like a small earthquake at all. I heard things in my kitchen falling, Michael McCarley, who lives in an apartment in the City Creek Landing development in the capital, told KSL. This is the state's most powerful quake since 1992 when a magnitude 5.9 tremor struck the St. George area, Utah's Division of Emergency Management said. Operations at the state's public health laboratory were halted as the building was assessed for damage, the State Department of Health said. The state's coronavirus hotline, which residents may call to request tests and seek information, was down after the quake, Governor Gary Herbert said on Twitter, though the health department said a temporary information line was available. The Department of Health said its lab is being assessed for damage and testing will resume when the building is determined to be safe. There were no samples being tested at the time of the earthquake, the department said in a media advisory posted on Twitter. Additionally, no samples or laboratory equipment were damaged during the earthquake. And the article goes on to say what I was about to say, so we'll just completely read on, I guess. Commercial labs in the state are working and still processing COVID-19 tests, the department said. So, yeah, they're testing hard to make sure that nobody else in the great Mormon capital of the world has the COVID-19 virus. And I believe that they were one of the labs as well that was working on finding either a vaccine or the cure. So I hope that everybody in Utah is safe. I hope that Salt Lake City will recover from this, and everybody send your prayers out there, and make sure you look for charities as well to make sure we can support Salt Lake City. And with that, we're going to move on to a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. To borrow a line from the great Yarmulke commentator himself. So, the thing I like today, of course, is the fact that the supply chains are starting to recover at this point. I was talking to family and the girlfriend's family, and they found out that, yes, they can go and resupply their paper products. Toilet paper is starting to resupply in the southern Wisconsin area, which means that it's going to start resupplying in other places as well. The trucks are still running. No matter what the truck stops want to do to try and prevent it and try and make it harder on the truckers, they are going along strongly. And they're carrying the load. And, well, no pun intended, they're carrying the load. They are carrying what we need them to carry in this country. And they are making sure that you still have what you need as you go along. So make sure you go ahead and thank a trucker at some point today if you see him. I know I always will. Because, I mean, there are incredible demands to get supplies around this country right now. And they're working as hard as they can. And they're working as hard as the bureaucracy will allow them as well. Keep in mind that they do have to have their 10-hour break every day. They have to stop for breaks in the middle of things every day. They have to eat amid a time where truck stops are trying to make sure that they can't eat or have a harder time eating. They have to shower amid a time where truck stops are making it harder for them to shower. And they're biting the bullet, they're sucking down, and they're doing the work. So good on them. Thank you for getting out there. And now a thing that I hate. So the argument has come right now, of course. We have all the Bernie bros that are out celebrating the fact that the stock market is down and people are suffering and people are dying because this means that the economy is going bad and it wasn't as good as everybody thought. And I got into an argument with somebody. Of course, the first thing that he tried to tell me is that this would all be solved if healthcare was a human right. And I got to thinking about this, and I hate the fact that people think that if something is a human right, that means it needs to be provided for you for free, and that's not the case. And if I still had time to do solo videos between doing all of this and my regular job and everything else that I do, I would make a solo video on this, but I want to leave you with this. Healthcare is absolutely a human right. It is protected under the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is true, but they're trying to bastardize it in a point. You have the right to go out and attempt to purchase healthcare in a market that is free and make sure that everybody who provides healthcare is compensated justly for the fact that you are getting healthcare. That is part of the pursuit of happiness. Just like I have the right to go out and pursue weapons to defend myself against all threats, foreign and domestic, including a government that may become too far overreaching, or somebody who would like to break into my home and take all of my stuff. I have the right to property and the right to protect my property. But the difference is, I will never demand that the government issue me an arm to defend myself. Yet those people who say healthcare is a human right, I'm talking to you, Bernie, insist that the government issue them healthcare because it is a human right, and that is not the case. I will grant you it is a human right, but just like the right to keep and bear arms, you have the right to go out and purchase it in a fair market. Compensate those who will provide it justly. And the fact that we do keep it on a point where it is free market and justly is what has led our country to have some of the best medical innovations in the world and continues to lead medical innovation. Yes, it's a human right, the pursuit of happiness. If having healthcare makes you happy, then pursue it. Purchase it, buy it. But no more than the government will provide me an arm to defend myself against them will and should a government provide you something that you believe is a human right. We are in a market for a reason. Use the market. And if you can't use the market, find a charity that will help you use the market as well. And with that, we're going to call it a day here. Thanks everybody who came and checked us out. Make sure you come back tomorrow where we'll have more content. And we will shout out the people who came and watched in the live chat. So if you were in the live chat, I will get your name written down and we'll go ahead and check that out. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.